Hi everyone, it is me, Sailor Venus, Mina here, and today it is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, or Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King Younger Day, a holiday or holy day set aside to give onlook and to think of Martin Luther King Younger, who was a holy man but who also stood up and started the rights for the black folk in the Forone Rikes. Now, this may be a little unlike in the rest of the world. You know, I can't speak for the black folks in the settled land how they were handled back in the day, but I do know that the black folks living in the Forone Rikes really did not have a good start. A lot of them were brought over, a lot of their forekind were brought over to, what would become the Forone Rikes in a settled land from black land. And a lot of them were put into a lot of them were furls who had become free after, after the folk war between the Forone Rikes and the outlawed Rikes, which wasn't really truly a land, more of the half of the Rikes leaving because they felt that they should have the right to own folks as furls. Now, the sad thing about this was that even though the Forone Rikes won the folk war and all of the former Rikes that left, most of them were the Southern Rikes, had come back, but they did for a long time make life hard for the black folks who became free and became bearers of the Forone Rikes. Martin Luther King Younger would do a lot of restful uprising and against this. He would have restful walks. They would go around and talk to folks and show folks that black folks were the same as white folks and that they should have the same rights and the same freedoms. And a lot of times, a lot of these folks let's just say it never really ended well for them. Martin Luther King and his folks were always either, talked down to, scathed or shamed it, or sometimes put in lockup. But Martin Luther King and his followers did not fight back. When I mean they didn't start fights. They stood up for what they believed in. Now, Martin Luther King always was always willing to do what he thought was right. And there was a woman called Rosa Parks who is no longer with us anymore. But her saga goes that one time she gotten on a lorry, and there was this oversight, I guess, or a law or whatever it was, that if you happened to be sitting somewhere and someone white wanted that seat, well, then you had to give it up. And Rosa Parks chose not to give up her seat. Martin Luther King heard about this, about her choosing not to give up her seat, but doing it in a very restful way. And then that's when he got into his head that he would also stand up for the folk rights. Martin Luther King was hoping that all of his talks and all of his speeches, that soon the laws, both in Gaver, Reich, Share, and Near, would soon make it where black men and black women would have the same rights and the same freedoms as white men and white women. Hell, everyone should have the same rights and the same freedoms. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his speech, or Younger gave his speech at Washington, D.C., the Dream Speech, where he had a dream where one day the Forone Rikes would live up to its true meaning, that all men and women were crafted the same, that all men and women should have the same rights and freedoms, and that black men and black women and white men and white women could all hold hands together, and that they could all say they were free, and that they would only be doomed it by their behaviors and their deeds, but not by the cast of their skin. Now, there were a lot of other folks that Martin Luther King was also standing up for as well. Not only the black folks, but many other folks who were also not being handled fairly. Well, sadly, like what tends to happen a lot of times, when someone stands up and does what they believe is right, there's always going to be someone out there that doesn't stand for it. And some man, I forget his name, shot Martin Luther King Jr. dead one day. And there were a lot of folks that felt that this would have put the end to the folk rights, but it did not. Now, it is true that Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the force setter at the time, had written into law the folk right law, which gave black men and black women the same rights and freedoms as white men and white women had, giving them the right to the same rights. But it would still be a long time before everyone would soon have the same rights. Because even though it was a Gavir law, many Reichs and Shears and Nears chose not to uphold it, and it would be a long time until that would be truly happen. Now, today, it is not like how it was. A lot of folks now have the rights and freedoms that were given to them by God, and that the law mode had to uphold those rights and shield those rights and freedoms. So this holiday or holy day set aside to think about and onlook Hailor Martin Luther King Jr. and him standing up for folk rights and the Forone Rikes. And I like to think that even though we have come a long way from those days, there is still a lot of work that does need to be done. Even though there are a lot more folks out there who are not kind-hating, but there are still some folks out there who still kind-hate on others. But I think we came a long way from those days. But I still think there's still things that can be worked on. So that's just me giving my thought on the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is a holiday in the Forone Rikes. I don't know if there's a holiday and holy day in other lands, but it is in the Forone Rikes. And, and some folks seem to say that it was his birthday, which the HOLYDAY or holiday was set for. So everyone, take your time to think about Hailor Martin Luther King Jr., the folk rights, walks that he did, the speeches that he did, the folks that he stood up for, and the things that he hoped to shift by him giving his speeches and his restful uprisings. So that's it. If you like this film, then follow me over here to Jordan Long Fairway. Watch the other film that we made earlier this morning when Sailor Jupiter Lita talked about waking up late and having a bad start to the day. I, Sailor Venus Mina, or Sailor Hellrolled, or Sailor Hot Rolled Mina, and I'll see you later. Goodbye, farewell. Don't forget to play, listen, share, and hit that ringer when you want to see when more uploads and lives and shorts have been uploaded. Goodbye.